Good morning to everybody. Jane, would you like to just introduce yourself, and then Yvonne, if you would carry on, please.
Morning, everyone. So oh gosh, that was louder than I thought it was going to be. I won't lean forward. Morning, everyone. I'm Jane Davies. I'm the Director of Housing and Customer Services for St Ledger Homes, and I know I've met all of you before, and some of you up to 7 o'clock last night, so excellent.
Hello, I'm Yvonne Fox and I'm the Service Director for Strategic Housing, Property and Safer Communities at the Council.
Thank you for that introduction. So welcome to everybody. Just before we start the meeting, could we have the housekeeping, the fire alarm? A fire practice is not expected, so if the alarm sounds, can all present leave the building as quickly as possible by way of the nearest exit. The designated assembly point is in the public square in front of Cast, beyond the fountain, away from the civic office. If there is anybody with mobility issues, please wait in the refuge area at the top of the stairs where the emergency evacuation lift is located, and use the intercom situated to the left-hand side of the lift doors to call for assistance. No roll call will be undertaken. Thank you. Mobile phones. Would you please turn them off? Thank you. Filming of the meeting. This meeting will be audio-visually recorded and will be available to view on the Council's website and the YouTube channel. Can I ask all those present to use their microphones to ensure the audio can be captured? Any member of the public entering the Council chamber are accepting that their images will be retained and broadcast by the Council. If there are any public in attendance, if any member of the public or press is intending to record or film any part of today's meetings, please ensure that this does not disturb the conduct of the meeting. If you are visually recording, you are requested to only focus on recording. Apologies for absence. We have one apology for absence from Councillor Rachel Reid. To consider the extent, if any, to which the public and press are to be excluded from the meeting. I believe there are no issues on the agenda. Declarations of interest, if any. If you have an interest, please declare this, and a form will need to be completed following the meeting. Please contact Christine Rothwell, who will assist you with this process. No, thank you. Minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of March 2025. For approval as a correct record.
Move it, Chair.
Thank you. Matters arising are not undertaken. Public statements. A period not exceeding 20 minutes for statements from up to 5 members of the public on matters within the panel's remit, proposing actions which may be considered or contribute towards the future development of the panel's work programme. Are there any members of the public? No members of the public. So we'll move on to the actual Doncaster strategy. So we will turn the page. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Doncaster tenancy strategy for 2025 to 2030. The attendees are, unfortunately, Don Swain has sent his apologies, but we have in attendance Yvonne Fox, the Service Director for Place, who has already introduced herself, and Jane Davies, Director of Housing and Customer Service, St Ledger Homes, who will be here for the grilling. Right, can we hand over to Yvonne?
Thank you, Chair. The tenancy strategy that we're here to discuss today is a document that's required legally under the Localism Act to be provided by all local authorities, all local housing authorities, to provide a framework for all social letting landlords within the city to have reference to. So the document sets out what sort of tenancies we expect people to give, what sort of, if they want to make use of fixed term tenancies, if they want to make exceptions to their policies in terms of successions, what legally we would expect them to do. So this document is reviewed every 5 years, and the document was due to be reviewed last year. However, due to some delays, it was decided that we would bring the tenancy strategy and the tenancy agreement together, but then we've had to go back out to some consultation on the tenancy agreement, so we've split them off again, which is why we're dealing with the tenancy strategy today. But obviously some of the questions that you will have reference to both the tenancy strategy and the tenancy agreement. If I pass you over to Jane.
Thank you. So just a bit of context as to why I'm here, really. So as Yvonne said, the tenancy strategy is a legal requirement for the council, but St Leger Homes are obviously the main housing provider within the city for and represent and managing the council stock. So it's really important therefore that St Leger Homes follow the tenancy strategy and have some input into what goes into that strategy. So what will happen following the agreement of the tenancy strategy is St Leger Homes will have the responsibility of implementing that for the council housing stock. So we will develop our tenancy policy that sits underneath that will go into more detail around the decisions that will be made, the types of tenancies that will be offered, and how we will administer that and deliver that. We'll also make sure our tenancy agreement, so it is the council's tenancy agreement, but that's one of the things that St Leger Homes has devolved to us to deliver. So we are reviewing that at the moment, and that tenancy agreement and our tenancy policy will deliver the tenancy strategy that is agreed by the council and agreed by all of you ultimately. It's we've gone through lots of discussions, lots of pain, lots of data, lots of analysis on this tenancy strategy because it's a difficult and quite emotive subject, tenancy strategy. There's two areas that we've had to really quite closely look at and two sort of things that take into consideration. We know, and from some of your questions today, which we'll go through the answers, that demand for housing is unprecedentedly high. And I can't stress that enough, unprecedentedly high. So we want to create sustainable communities. We've always had that ethos in Doncaster about sustainable communities. So we want to give people lifetime tenancies. We don't want tenancies to fail. We want people to pass those tenancies on down their families, and we want people to thrive in communities. Absolutely we do. But we've also got to make the best use of stock because we've got unprecedented demand and we have a diminishing stock. You know, I know we're buying stock and we're building stock and we don't want a diminishing stock, but then we're selling stock through right to buy. So it has diminished over years. We do want to turn that curve and stop the diminishment, but we don't have enough stock to go round. And that is absolutely the bottom line. So those two things we've had to really grapple with and take into account with this tenancy strategy around how we allocate council housing and how we sustain that and how we then reallocate that. So two distinct areas. One is around flexible tenancies and the types of tenancy that we offer. And Yvonne mentioned about the Localism Act, then what that brought in, the options for councils to either stay with lifetime tenancies or go down the flexible tenancy route. Back in 2017, I think it was, when we actually did the first tenancy strategy, the council made the decision to go with larger properties for flexible tenancies and remain with lifetime tenancies for the rest of the stock. And that was due to best use of stock, but also wanting to keep that sustainable communities ethos within the way we allocate homes. But the way it was decided with larger properties at that point was to go with the length of tenancy should be the age of the youngest child's 19th birthday. So that's what the current strategy is. What we're proposing is that we go with a fixed term of 5 years, which is what the Localism Act actually says. And that's not wanting to reduce people's tenancies, because if we get to a point where we review those tenancies and the occupation levels are still what they need to be for that property, we'll give them another 5-year tenancy. So we're not trying to destabilise tenancies at all. What we're actually trying to do is just make it a bit clearer for families, that they understand the terms of their tenancy, and then we will manage those accordingly. And with successions, what we absolutely don't want to do is take people's rights away. That's not what we want to do at all. We just want to leave it quite open that we can make those decisions within the law. I think that's probably it by way of introduction. As I say, we've got all the answers to all the questions that have come through. I'm sure there'll be more as well, but I'll hand back to the chair and see what you want, how you want us to play it.
Well, thank you for that introduction. Right, we do have a few questions. Can I call on Councillor Rebecca Booth, please, to place a question?
Good morning. The question is the need to reduce a high turnover. Is there a single main reason for this, and are there measurements to combat this?
Okay, so thank you, Councillor Booth. Now, I did get this one in advance, and I'm presuming that you mean high turnover of council properties, the ones that come empty and get relet. Yeah, that's fine. That's how I've answered it. So turnover of current stock has actually reduced. So pre-COVID, we used to have around 1,800 a year, voids and relets. Post-COVID, during and post-COVID, that went down to about 900. And that was just society, and people just didn't want to move, and things really sort of came to a halt. Turnover has gone up slightly, I think just over 1,100 that we became empty and relet last financial year. So we are seeing things creep back up again. We do really closely monitor reasons for termination and to see if we can reduce, because we don't want properties terminating. They cost money, and again, it's not conducive to tenancy sustainability. Things like death of tenants, very little we can do about. That is our highest reason for properties becoming empty. But what we do measure quite closely is tenancy failure. So if tenancies are failing because of eviction, or because of people going into rent arrears, or leaving because they can't afford to live there, or leaving because there's antisocial behaviour going on, that's what we class as tenancy failure. So we've got a lot of services and measures in place at St Ledger to promote tenancy sustainability and reduce tenancy failure. We've got a tenancy sustainability model. So all our tenancies we RAG rate as red, amber, green, depending on their level of risk around tenancy failure. And if somebody's classed as a red-rated tenant, we call them intensive. They need intensive tenancy support, and we've got a tenancy support team that deliver that for a period of up to 8 weeks. Can potentially go on for longer, but that's what we want to avoid, because it is intensive. We work with people on a daily basis. We do very, very well with that, and one of our indicators with those high risk tenancies is we measure from when they've been supported and closed that support, how many of those are still in tenancies after 6 months, and that's over 99%. So we do a really, really good job on that tenancy support service. The other thing we've introduced quite recently is a furnished tenancy scheme, because one thing we were finding when tenancies were failing is that people just didn't know how to manage a tenancy, couldn't afford furniture, couldn't afford carpets, etc. So we've introduced a furnished tenancy scheme in the last 12 months, and that's been really successful. So June 24, and we've signed up 126 furnished tenancies to the scheme, and none of those have failed to date. So that's something that we're looking now at expanding, and that's really going from strength to strength. I'll be honest, we don't want too many. There is a ceiling for that, because what we don't want to get to is that we're a housing provider of furnished tenancies only. You know, we do want to promote independence as well. So what we don't want, and it's expensive. So there's some downfalls to having a furnished tenancy. It's expensive. People can get into a poverty trap with it because they can't afford it without being on benefits. So we need to, you know, monitor everything we do really to make sure that we're really promoting independence and tenancy sustainability overall. There's lots of other things. I could go on forever around tenancy sustainability, but does that answer your question enough?
It does. I was just going to ask, how much, when you said that you become furnished, is there a specific amount that they're allowed to go up to? How much do you lend, and is that then put onto the cost of the rent and claimed back that way, or is it just as a one-off good gesture for?
It goes on to the rent. So we've got a company that we work with, Your Homes Newcastle they're called, and they provide a furniture pack. So there's different levels of furniture pack. Pack A, basic pack, might be 50. I don't know the figures off the top of my head. Absolutely fine, can provide all this for you. So that might be £15 a week, for example, and there's different things that a tenant can pick from that furniture pack. It might be table and chairs, settee and microwave, for example. That might be pack A. Pack B is a little bit more expensive, pack C and pack D. So it goes up to what is quite a plush furniture package, and that might be out £30 odd a week. So it's all housing benefitable. So that's fine while people are on housing benefit, but it does get expensive when people are paying for it themselves. Yeah, but it's a weekly charge on the rent.
Okay, thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Jane.
May I ask a supplementary on that question, Mr. Chair?
Sorry.
Can I ask a supplementary on that question?
Yes, you can, John, please.
Sorry. Any danger that in a community where they all know each other, if one person was granted this, everyone then would say, why not me? Thank you.
Yeah, there absolutely is, and we do have a criteria on it. So we will offer it to new tenants only, or those tenants that fall into particular hardship. So we do have a criteria around it, because yeah, we've got to keep a lid on it. We don't want it to go that we've got thousands and thousands.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you for that, John. Neil, I believe you have a question as well.
Morning. You said that high risk, high intensity tenants, you look after them for 8 weeks. And then you said your success rate is after 6 months, 99% of them are still in. After 6 months, what's the condition of the property and what's the neighbours like around them? Do you actually go back and do an assessment of that?
Thank you for that. Yes, we do. What we don't do is assessment of a post-tenancy support case, but then they will fall into, because what we have is that RAG rating. So once they've had their intensive support, we would do what we call downgrade them, drop them, step them down to either amber or green, depending what the circumstances are. So then they're managed in a different way. If they were stepped down to amber, we call them housing plus. And then they would fall into the area housing management team. They would have a housing officer assigned to them. And depending on what those issues are, it might, if it's rent, for example, it would be an income management officer. So they'd still support and manage them, but on a much less intensive way. So it would be more, we would keep track on if somebody was stepped down and they were in arrears, or they were still struggling with payments, the income management officer would keep their eye on that case. If they went down to green, say, and so we would class those as sustainable, we would just monitor them. They would come back into us if they started to go into arrears again or started to cause some issues. So we just manage them like any other tenancy, really.
And then second to that, then you know your furnished homes that you've done that you said you've got 126 and none have failed. What's typical demographic of these people?
Single people. So we've got quite a number of, they are mainly single people. Some are families, but that's mainly the demographic is single people who may have come through the homeless route, may not have come through the homeless route, but who are just really not managed tenancies before.
So would it be fair to say that it's like the first home then, that you're offering them?
Yeah, exactly that.
Thank you.
Right, can we move on? We're going to be running out of time, Ewan. So can I call on Councillor John Reid for his first question?
Thank you, Chair. The thrust of the changes is to use a clear fixed-term approach, as you already highlighted, but could you give practical examples of where the other two options of a secure lifetime approach and the assured tenancy may mutually benefit the provider, us and the tenant?
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Reid. So what we're proposing here, so assured tenancies are for housing associations, not for council properties. So that is the highest level of tenancy that housing associations, because that's the same as our secure lifetime tenancies for housing associations. So the council will only offer either secure lifetime, which always start with an introductory period. So starter tenancies is one terminology. So all tenancies will have that 12-month introductory. All we're proposing as fixed term is for 4-bed properties and upwards. So 4, 5 and 6 beds. We do have some 6 beds, not many, but we do have some. So that's the only properties that we are proposing to let as flexible tenancies, 5-year flexible tenancies, with then the option for rolling to another flexible tenancy. So benefits of lifetime tenancies, the main one really is sustainable communities. Giving people a lifetime home enables that tenant, that family, to make that their home. They're more aligned to spend money in that home, to keep it clean, tidy and look after it. So that's going to be more the case if we offer lifetime tenancies, and that will create sustainable communities.
Thank you. No follow-ups for that one, Chair.
Thank you for that. Can we move on to the next question again from Councillor John Reid? Sorry, Steve, I didn't.
Yeah, a lifetime tenancy. I mean, I get it, because we see people transitioning from one property to another one, and you do want people in the same place. But when you come to succession, how does that work with a lifetime tenancy? Because if the person there has been given a lifetime tenancy and they end up potentially being the only occupant of that property, and somebody else moves in because they're ill, whatever, would that automatically, because there's different recommendations in here about succession, but if that person, let's say, had moved in 2 months before to help this person that's living there, would they then be able to succeed with that tenancy? What would happen, or how long would somebody have to live with somebody before that came about? Because then we could see that properties are being sold on, somebody's saying, right, come and help grandma, and then you can buy a house. And we know that happens, but how can we, monitor it, stop it? Because we could end up with somebody that's coming to move into a 3-4 bedroom house, to buy that 3-4 bedroom house, and it's taken out of stock and it's not being used the best way it can. So is there anything we can do to adjust this succession policy, or just to make it more beneficial to St Ledger?
Thank you for that. You're absolutely right, Steve. So what can happen is that people do move in. We have, Johnny moves in with grandma and to look after her, and lo and behold, grandma passes away and Johnny wants the tenancy, and it can be a bungalow, and it's extremely difficult if he qualifies for succession, extremely difficult for us then to move him out. So what the law says, when the Localism Act came in, it changed the law on successions. What the law says, because the Housing Act says spouse, grandma, granddad, niece, uncle Tom Cobley and all qualify for succession as long as they have lived there 12 months preceding the date of death of the tenant. So that's the qualifying period under the Housing Act. The Localism Act changed that and said that automatic rights for succession is spouse and cohabitee only. So partner, basically. But what the Localism Act says is that if councils want to add the other family members back in under an express clause, they can do that. It just makes it very complicated, if I'm being really honest. So the qualifying term for other family members at the moment is still 12 months. One option would be to say, we're just going to go with the Localism Act. It's only partners that qualify. Anyone else left in occupation, we won't throw out of the property. We will deal with them. We'll assess them under the allocations policy. And if they qualify, we can give them a new introductory tenancy. So we're not throwing people out, but if they don't qualify, if they're left on an occupation of a 3-bed house, or if they've just moved into, if we think they could potentially be trying to circumvent the system here, then we can assess them, we can move them somewhere else. That's easy to do because they don't have any tenancy rights. So that's one option we could do. Another option might be to say, well, other family members can succeed, but they've got to have lived there 5 years. So we can put different terms on. We have to stick with 12 months and spouse only because that's the law. No getting out of that, and we wouldn't want to, would we? Absolutely wouldn't want to do that. But other family members, it's in our gift to do something different if we want to.
Who ultimately makes the decision on all this then, and what laws are abided to and what laws aren't? And because, I mean, to me, it would seem that it's spouses and direct family that should be in that succession because it's been their home. Somebody else to come in, it's not been their home, and they could come in and monitor. There are enough services out there to support people that are ill, etc. So how can we as an authority manage the stock and stick to one rule? Do you understand what I mean?
I absolutely do, Steve. Yeah. Well, the only way that we can absolutely manage that as tight as we can is to just abide by the law, and the law says spouse only. However, I absolutely completely understand that ward members and us to some degree what we don't want is for somebody who's lived in that family home, daughter, son, who's lived there all their life, and they say, I don't want to leave, I've lost my mum. And so we don't want that. We absolutely don't want that. And we would work with them. And if we thought they're qualified, they fit the allocations policy, they might have had children there themselves, so they're left in occupation of a 3-bed house, but they've got children, they're eligible. Fine, we'll give them a new tenancy. And actually that puts them in a better position, because if they'd succeeded, they wouldn't have another right of succession. That's gone. There's only one right of succession. But if we give them a new tenancy, they will get another right of succession. So it's putting them actually, the ones that are really genuine, that would put them in a better position. The ones that aren't genuine, it allows us to wheedle them out, either put them into a different property, or talk to them about their housing options. So that's probably the only way. But as I say, there are other things we can put in this 5-year to allow people to, they've got to prove that they've lived there 5 years, for example. And it puts people off trying to work the system, I suppose. So that's it's the council's decision what goes into that tenancy strategy, and St Ledger then just have to abide by that and deliver that.
Yes, Yvonne, you.
I just wanted to add as well that the successions, it is a really important point, because if we give a succession, if we allow someone to succeed to the tenancy, they also succeed to all the years that that person may have lived there and gain the right to buy discount. So it's much better to have an arrangement in place whereby if someone does qualify, they're given a new tenancy, because then they build up their own right to buy discount, not acquire maybe a grandparent's 50 years. So it is a really important point.
Thank you for that, Yvonne. Can I once again call on Councillor John Reid to put his third question, please?
Chair, I think these chats have dealt with question 3. Permission to move on to number 4.
Sorry. If you would move on to number 4, please, John.
All right, Jane, okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Rents. Please clarify, do we as DMBC and St Ledger have the right autonomously to set rents, or do we have to set guidance from Simca, let's say, or government level?
We do, yes. So there's a government formula for setting a social rent. So there's different types of rent. There's a social rent, which is obviously for council, local authority accommodation. Then there's affordable rent, which we can use affordable rent in certain circumstances. It's only through acquisitions where the funding stipulates affordable rent. Affordable rent is quite a bit higher than social rent. That's calculated at 80% of market rent. Then market rent is the rent that the market dictates, really, which private landlords will use. So social rents is set using a government formula, and we are only allowed to increase those rents by up to CPI plus 1%. CPI plus 1%. 1 year, CPI was about 8%, and it allowed us to increase our rents by a significant amount. I think it was 7% that we agreed on in Doncaster, but we are only allowed to go up to CPI plus 1%, and then the council decides each year in its fees and charges report how much within that window Doncaster is going to increase its rents by.
Thank you, Jane.
And John?
Yep.
Thank you for that answer, Jane. I was going to ask if there's like a cap on the rent, but it's like an ethereal cap because it's dependent on the percentage increase on CPI per year. So instead of that, what's the current highest rent that is charged through St Ledger?
So if we're saying social rent, I will have to come back to you. It's around £110, and that would be for a 5 or 6 bed for a larger. It goes on the property, the size of the property. It's around that, but I can get you the exact figures I can give you a table of what all the average rents are for each property side. That's not a problem. Affordable rent, so those acquisitions where we've got Homes England funding and they stipulate affordable rent, quite a bit higher. There's some that go up to about 150, 160 a week. So again, I can give you a table with all that on.
Yvonne, you?
Just wanted to clarify as well, we do have some properties that are let on affordable rents where the council has built. Now, in the previous administration, Homes England were provided funding on the basis that new homes were built at affordable rents. That has now changed. The new ruling is that all social housing is built to social rent. So there will be some anomalies, so it is always very confusing. There are a few new build properties that are also at an affordable rent, but that's because it was the rules that the Homes England put down at the time.
I do apologise for that. I thought I'd turned it off. Steve?
With rents being low, obviously they are. It's Mayor says all the time we've got lowest in England.
Yeah.
Fantastic. But now we're putting new properties online with the social rent. Are we ever going to receive the right return for that property? It's going to take longer, obviously, because the rent is so low. And it's a question that I've asked before about affordability and affordable rent, building affordable properties and the differences between. I think I'm fully aware of the differences between. So say, for example, just to explain, if a house is built in Finley and it's affordable rent, that rent is going to be massively higher than a house, let's say, that would be built in Intake, because it reflects the rents around it. Now, in keeping the rents low, has it caused further issue in maintenance, in monies coming in to keep these properties up to date? And how can we look and reassess this? Because we also see, or I see, the disparity between social renting, affordable renting, is also causing some people potentially to go into debt, into homelessness, because the disparity is so big. And how can we narrow that gap? I don't know if you know. I don't.
Yes, it is a fascinating subject, looking at rents, and the recent announcements by the government are looking at ways in which we know that in terms of the maintenance of stock, we've got a number of big issues that we've got to address, such as Awab's Law and perhaps a new decent homes standard, and also the work around damp and mould. So the pressure on the HRA is quite significant at the moment. We manage the HRA extremely well. St Ledger provide a good service at value for money. However, you know, we do have to make decisions on competing demands and programmes, because we do have the money that we have to spend is what we get from rents. So there is an opportunity at the moment for local authorities to look at their rents, and there's an opportunity to put either £1 or £2 a week on rents as a one-off increase. And that will that's going out for consultation at the moment. And if it's approved, then the council will be able to consider whether they want to put that £1 or £2 a week on. Because we do have such low rents, the impact of a £2 increase would be quite significant and would bring in quite a lot of additional money, which would obviously benefit tenants and would lead to more investment in stock and everything. So yes, in terms of your other question around the rent level, the investment on properties, again, that's another area that the government are currently looking at in terms of right to buy regulations, and they're considering that houses that are built are exempt from right to buy for a period of up to, and they've spoken about 25 years plus. So there are considerations of that at the moment, because there is a cost ceiling limit at the moment where for the first however many years, and I'll have to give you the exact figure, but for the first so many years, people have to pay full market value for the properties. But once that cost ceiling's expired, then you know they can buy at a hugely reduced rate. But the move is to leave that cost and exempt them from right to buy for a period of time.
Thank you for that, Iman. Can we move on to question 5 again from Councillor John Reid? If you would, John.
Thank you, Chair. This question is actually split between you and I for continuity. Are you happy with me to ask the whole lot? It's the answer that's important, not the answer.
Yes, that is acceptable, John.
Demand is an unprecedented level. Thousands quoted as being on the register, many with high priorities. We're obviously changing from an old to a new plan for a reason. What, when this new plan, will do most to ease your burden?
Okay, and Councillor Reid, by the new plan, you mean the tenancy strategy? Yes. And the proposals? Yeah. I'll be really honest, not a great deal. There's so much more we need to do with regards to the allocations policy and homeless prevention and all those things are what will really make the difference in terms of demand. These changes, these proposed changes, will go some way, but you're probably talking, say if successions of non-spouse family members, we're probably talking a couple of hundred a year. And then flexible tenancies, so allocation of 4, 5, 6 bed properties, around 100 a year. So it's not a massive dent. It's not going to create a real reduction in demand for council housing. It's just one way of being able to manage the stock better.
Makes the admin slightly easier, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. No supplementaries on that. Just to continue, regarding homeless and rough sleepers, do we have any statistical information and any information as to hotspots?
Yes. So hotspots with regards rough sleepers is majority city centre. It absolutely is the majority city centre. In some of the outskirts, we're finding hotspots at the moment on the Bawlby Bridge estate, in the high-rise flats, and we're finding Hexthorpe has got quite a concentration as well. So, and I would say that is as a consequence of more of a squeeze on the city centre, increased enforcement, and what we find is that then sort of pushes out. The reason that it's more the hotspot city centre is just around that people support each other. People who are more entrenched rough sleepers congregate and they do support each other. So that's the way we find that rough sleepers won't necessarily go out and rough sleep on the outskirts of Doncaster because there's no support network there. So that's certainly what we find, and the outreach team that go out and count and support rough sleepers every day, they concentrate round those hotspot areas where they know that the rough sleepers are. I've got some numbers. So this is from the outreach team who go and count them and support them. April, they counted on average 30 a night, 36 in May, 30 in June. So they're the latest figures that I've got. So that's a total of 71 across the quarter. New to rough sleeping, because that's something we monitor as well. New people, 7 in April, 3 in May and 2 in June. Then the top reasons for rough sleeping are eviction. So being evicted from supported housing is the main reason. Relationship breakdown and abandonment. So that's people abandoning their tenancies for various reasons. Just to align that with, because what then St Ledger Homes do is monitor the top reasons for statutory homelessness. So they're the ones where we do have a priority need, statutory duty to. So our top reasons for homelessness are relationship breakdown. So that's very similar with regards to the rough sleepers, and that's mainly relationships within families, and it's mainly single people. Then ending of assured short-hold tenancy, so they're private sector landlords, that's mainly families, and then domestic abuse. So they're all very much aligned. We understand what the issues are, what the main causes of homelessness are. We do. Trying to prevent it and reduce it is much harder.
Sorry,
Any
you're going to believe you
supplementaries?
have
None
a
from me.
supplementary question.
Thank you, Chair. Jen, I just want to clarify, when you're saying about the average numbers that the outreach team see per night is about 30, 36 in those months, is that in addition to the Homeless Tonight presentations? Because this strategy says that can reach up to 50 per night in that. So is it, we're talking 50 that present and then 30 that the outreach team see per night?
Yes, it is separate. So the rough sleeper numbers are the ones that are seen bedded down by the outreach team on the street, who probably haven't contacted us all day. The Homeless Tonight ones are the ones who actually contact St Ledger Homes and say, I haven't got anywhere to sleep tonight. They are, a different cohort to the rough sleepers.
Thank you. This is in regards to the first part of question 5. When it comes to the breakdown of rents that are being granted, of properties that are being granted, what's the breakdown of because you've mentioned as a response to an earlier question that most the properties that were allocated were mostly to single persons. Can we have a breakdown of who these people are? Are they local? Are they not? Are they nationals? Are they not?
Yes, absolutely. I can, yeah, we've got reams of data about allocations. That comment about single people was mainly around furnished tenancies. So that's because that's the cohort that we're finding are coming through needing furnished tenancies. So yeah, I can absolutely do that. I can provide you a breakdown of furnished tenancies. Do you want a breakdown of allocations across the piece and how they are allocated?
As broad as possible. It's just because that also branches into the second part of the question when it comes to rough sleepers as well. Thank you.
Yes, will do.
Right, thank you for that. Just going on to the rough sleepers again, Jen. Do we have a breakdown of whether it's predominantly male or female?
Yes, we do. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but it's predominantly male.
Thank you. Moving on, this is my question to you. Fixed-term tenancies, are they subject to the right to buy legislation? Can you expand on that, please?
Yeah, yes, they are. So they will qualify for the right to buy. But with the new rules around right to buy, somebody has got to be in a tenancy for, is it 5 years now? Yes. 5 years. So they wouldn't be eligible to buy their property in the first 5 years of a flexible tenancy.
Thank you. Page 20. Sorry, keep forgetting. Page 20 under paragraph 9 refers, the council has in place financial support funds to assist with the impact of welfare reform and vulnerability and financial hardship via the discretionary housing payments, which is administered by the council's benefit section. In addition, the Sustainable Tenancy Fund, administered by St Ledger Homes for council tenants. All eligible tenants can apply for financial assistance from these funds, and applications will be assessed according to the circumstances against set criteria. My question is, do we have any statistics as to the take-up of the funds regarding discretionary housing payments and the Sustainable Tenancy Fund?
We do, yes. So the difference between the discretionary housing fund and sustainable tenancies fund, one discretionary housing fund is legislative, it comes from the government, the council administer that, and that's for all tenures, not just council tenants. Then the sustainable tenancies fund, that's not legislative, that's a pot of money that we've decided that we're going to use some money. It's not a big pot of money, but we use that for things like we might buy somebody a cooker if they're really struggling and they can't feed the children, that sort of thing. Or we might buy somebody a bus pass if they've had to move somewhere else and things like that. So there's all sorts of things that we use the Sustainable Tenancies Fund for, but it's not for paying rent. Discretionary Housing Fund is predominantly for bridging the gap with rent. And it's things like bedroom tax. No, we're not supposed to call it that, but you know what I mean. And then difference between local housing allowance and market rent for private rented. So council properties only, 177 tenants since April 2024 that we've referred for discretionary housing payments with a total of £137,000 in financial gains for tenants. In that same period, we also supported 263 tenants in different ways. That's St Ledger Home, so with different benefits. So we might have got people, personal independent payments, etc. So we got an additional £70,000 of financial gains for 263 tenants across the same period. And then the Sustainable Tenancies Fund that I talked about supported a further 27 tenants, totalling £18,000. So that'll be, as I say, white goods, bus passes, etc., ancillary things.
Thank you for that, Jane. Well, my final question is on page 14, paragraph 26, refers to the consultation that has taken place with the tenants via St Ledger Homes of Doncaster Tenant Consultation Body, the One Voice Forum. This took place in August 2024. Tenants were satisfied with the reasons for the proposals and changes and understood the need for flexible tenancies. The only issues raised by tenants around concern were around vulnerability and the impact of having to move home on some households. Assurance was given that this will be taken into account. My question is, what is the membership number of the One Voice Forum, and has there been any other broader form of consultation conducted?
Okay, so the One Voice Forum is made up of between 50 and 20 tenant representatives from different areas. But as well as that, the way we do our tenant involvement model, we've got what we call a Get Involved group. And those tenants can be represented in lots of different ways, either on One Voice Forum, on our tenant scrutiny panel. They might just say, I don't want to come to do any of that, but you can write to me and ask me my opinion, or I'll fill a survey in. They might go out and do some mystery shopping for us. So there's lots of different ways that they can get involved. It's a bit of a pick and mix, really. So we did write to all our Get Involved group about this as well as talking to the One Voice Forum. So that was just purely on the tenancy strategy. What then comes out of it, when I explained at the beginning about the tenancy strategy and then what underpins that, what St Ledger Homes have to do with that, we have to make sure our tenancy agreement and our tenancy policy reflect the tenancy strategy. So any changes to our tenancy agreement, by law, we have to consult with every tenant and we have to write to every tenant. It's called a preliminary notice of variation, and we have to give a consultation period. So that has been done, and we're going through that process at the moment for any changes that might occur, because there's not just changes arising from this for the tenancy agreement. Tenancy agreement is coming through the approval process a couple of months later, so that will be coming here. That'll be a session and a half, let me tell you, because that's a really meaty document. But there's other changes that we want to make to the tenancy agreement, things like no access, people that don't let us in. We want to tighten up on that. Things like domestic abuse perpetrators, we want to tighten up on that. There's other legislation that has arisen since we last updated our tenancy agreement. So there's lots of changes to the tenancy agreement, some very minor, some more significant. So anything like that, we must write to every single tenant.
No, thank you for that. Thank you. Have we any supplementary questions? John, if you'd like to make.
Yeah, I think I speak for all. I'd like to thank you for the, obviously, research you've made in some detail, the accuracy of the answers given with no reservations. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me. Thank you. That's in regards to the first part of the discussion. You were saying that we have diminishing stock when it comes to the housing availability that we're supposed to have. My understanding is that we have new policies in place that will disincentivize people to purchase those properties at the end of the tenancy agreement, whatever that end is. Does that not work yet? Do we need to look into that? Do we need to change anything in regards to it?
So you're talking about purchasing properties, Councillor Crucian, yeah. So that is legislation, that's the law. So the right to buy rules have recently changed by the Labour government, so we have implemented those changes. We were selling, again, this slowed down with COVID. We were selling pre-COVID around 1,500 a year. That reduced. Yeah, it did reduce, and I don't know how I made it, but it reduced significantly, which is a good thing. However, since the government announced the new regulations, a new law around increased time for being able to qualify and less discount, etc., we've had around 600 or 700 right to buy applications that we're just working our way through. So, yeah, we absolutely have implemented the new government regulations
Right,
around
so
right to buy.
it de-incentivize on one side and then incentivize on the other.
Can you turn your mic off after you speak?
We, with right to buy, councillor, we just do what we're told by the government, basically.
So is there nothing we can do at a local level to manage this?
To reduce the numbers of right to buy? Unfortunately not. No. No, we don't advertise it. We don't encourage it in any way, shape or form. But no, there's nothing we can do to reduce right to buy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Neil, you have a supplementary question?
Thank you. What is the reason that you don't incentivise it or you don't advertise it, right to buy?
Because we want to keep the levels of the stock that we've got. And don't get me wrong, right to buy brings in income, and we can use that capital money for reinvesting either into existing homes or buying new homes, building new homes. That's all part of the wider housing strategy. But we don't want to, as a social housing provider, our ethos is to keep social homes, and that's what we want to do.
So I was saying it's the fact that we've got social rent that stops you from advertising the fact. Because if you build a new house, you can do affordable rent, which is 80% of the value of the rent around it, whereas social is literally governed by the rate plus CPI plus 1%. If we did go towards selling the houses off that, probably the highest maintenance houses are the ones that are social housing. If we went towards selling them properties, then surely we'd be able to invest in stock that's better quality, meeting building regs to higher standard. They're going to be self-insulated, everything else that comes with benefits of a new build. And then we've also said that if it's a new build, they can't buy it for 25 years. So it also means that we're going to have a stock that's going to be good quality, sustainable, and also probably going to guarantee more income for a longer period of time without losing them.
So in terms of right to buy receipts, the receipt that we get from right to buy doesn't go anywhere near building a replacement property. So it's not a one-for-one replacement. The cost that you may get back from a right to buy may be £50,000. The cost of building a new 3-bed house is closer to £275,000, £300,000. So you'd be looking at selling 6 to buy 1. So to pay for 1. So in terms of the rents, it's around making sure that we've got enough money in from rents to maintain the stock, the current stock at the levels that we want to maintain them at, and then obviously supplementing with new build properties. The government is at the moment asking that all new homes are built to social housing rent. They will give grant accordingly. If you don't build at social housing rent, you're not going to get grant at the moment. And in terms of the increase in the stock, we do have some stock which may need more investment than others. You're quite right. We do have some properties that are, that were built, a century ago. So we do have some homes that do need significant amounts of work. We do have issues around the stock, and may have to make some decisions regarding, you know, what we do with that stock in the future. But ultimately, in terms of right to buy, it doesn't give us a one-to-one replacement. We lose that stock in effect, and we lose the income from that stock for as long as that property had a useful life. So it does make a big impact on the HRA. It's a short-term win in terms of getting the capital receipt in, but it doesn't cover the cost of building a new property.
So when you say that a typical 3 bedrooms costing 275 to 300,000, is that going private sector?
No, it's because the issue is that a lot of our sites are ex-brownfield sites, so there's significant amounts of groundworks needed. So obviously that increases the unit cost. So in terms of the recent building programme that we've done, which was primarily based on brownfield sites, the unit costs were around the 275, £300,000 mark. Which is quite significant, but the groundworks that were needed were quite significant, so it does increase the costs.
Has there been any thought on the existing stock being utilised better? So say for argument's sake, we're talking about the 5 and 6 bedroom house. Is it possible that they could be split into 2 units to get you extra benefits?
We need the larger properties desperately, so we haven't got enough larger properties. So if we had a property that we could split that would benefit, then we could do that, and we would look to do that. But in terms of larger properties, we desperately need the larger properties. We desperately need the larger family houses. There is very high demand for single person accommodation, and we're currently looking at how we can perhaps look at how we can meet that demand through a variety of ways, because there is such a high demand for single person accommodation as well.
And then you talk about the express clause, that effectively using the express clause means that the right to buy carries over to the next successor. Mm-hmm. Would it be fair to say that if we didn't use the express clause, but we still give the same benefits of the express clause, but put into it that all new successors automatically get a new tenancy, and as long as the property that they're asking to succeed in is utilised to the standards that St Ledger Homes has, to ensure that we don't have people being displaced, because obviously there's school places and other things that might come into account, would it not be a good idea that it is actually a priority that these successors are allowed to fit in, if all the criteria that we just talked about, utilisation at building, getting rid of this right to buy scheme, carrying on through successor thing, is that something that we should be going to replace it?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of your views today, it would be really, really helpful and interesting if you did have any views on the express clause, because in terms of the tenancy strategy, what we put in is, because it's a framework for all social housing landlords within the city, what we put is that we expect social housing providers to adhere to legislation. However, if they wish to put in an express clause, they can do. We've done consultation with all social housing providers in Doncaster, and there are no accommodation providers that use an express clause. We are the only landlord in the city that do use an express clause at the moment. So in terms of deciding whether that's something we want to do in the future, we've obviously consulted widely on proposals to potentially take away the express clause and just stick to legislation. That is obviously one route that we can take. Or we could look at staying as we are, or we could look at still having an express clause but changing it. So maybe introducing a 5-year rule, or even a 10-year rule, or whatever anybody thought would be the right thing to do. But in terms of the granting of a new tenancy, if someone is, as you've quite rightly said, if somebody is eligible to stay in that property, it is much better for everyone, for us as a local authority, and also for that person, to give them a new tenancy. However, it does affect their right to buy entitlement. But if you're looking at actually protection for that family, it's better giving them a new tenancy. So you know, if everybody's got any comments, Jane and I can take those away, and then obviously when the tenancy agreement is back in front of you, we can have that. That's obviously one of the discussions that we'll be having, whether we keep the express clause, whether we change it, or whether we don't have an express clause.
So it'd be fair to say as well that by having the succession, you avoid voids, because the successor means that you don't need to move them out, clean house up, decorate it, fix it, and all others. And just out of interest, how many replies did you get from your consultation?
Councillor Wood.
How many replies did you get to your consultation, not from our voice, but the other people?
So there's two different things that we've consulted on. We've consulted on the tenancy strategy. We got around 100 responses to a survey that we sent out. I'd have to get...
Is that from 20,000 households or 20,000 people?
No, that's just from that Get Involved group number that I said, which was around 264. But the consultation on the tenancy agreement, 20,000, we've got about 5. Very, very low. And most of those people, I'll be really honest, that have contacted us is just to understand, because they didn't understand from reading it. So not a great deal.
Is Facebook something you should use?
The what, sorry?
Is Facebook something that you should be using to feed out?
So
or some sort of tenancy group?
Yeah, so we do. We use the website. We use our Tenants and Residents Association, so we try and gain some interest there. We sit down and explain things to people. Facebook can be difficult, I'll be really honest, because it can cause a load of flurry and lots of negativity sometimes when people sometimes just really don't understand. So we have used Facebook for consultation, not for this, I'll be honest. One, because it's statutory as well, so we have to write to every single tenant in a certain way, saying a certain format, a certain form of words. So yeah, we have used Facebook. Sometimes it's worked, sometimes it hasn't.
Thank you for that, Jane. Steve, you've...
Thank you. I can see that this is going to Cabinet on the 13th. Would recommendations from this committee support the succession part of it, where we are sticking to one rule instead of it being a bit of a mess, it seems? If we recommended that within this report to report back within your update, would that be helpful?
Yes, I mean obviously the report for this the recommendation is that we put in the tenancy strategy that we expect people to stick to legislation, but if they want to put in an express clause, they can. But obviously, if you're wanting to say from this group that you want us to consider removing or changing or keeping the express clause, then obviously we can feed that into the considerations for the tenancy agreement changes.
Sorry, Chair, just for noting, I personally would recommend a removal of that express, and that's just a comment. Thank you.
Sorry, can you be clear exactly what you're requesting, Steve?
I'm requesting that the removal of the, what's it called, policy is gone. Express clause. Been removed.
Thank you, Steve. Is anybody could second that? Is there a seconder? John, thank you. And you have a question, John?
Yeah, lastly and very quick, while we don't advertise, are the right to buy details on our council website, or are they sort of national generic and they go to gov.uk level or something like that?
So when I say we don't advertise and encourage, we don't advertise, we don't promote, but there's still information on our website
Right, okay.
about the right to
Right to
buy.
buy.
Yeah, and absolutely it then links through to the government one. So yeah, tenants can still find out. We don't try and hide it.
Thank you, Chair. No supplementaries.
Thank you, Chair. Jane and Yvonne, on the bottom of page 19, I've just read about the last sentence on those. Despite the reduced rents, the council continues to provide quality social housing maintained to the Doncaster Decency Standard. What is the Doncaster Decency Standard?
Okay, so Decent Homes was back in 2010, I think that was. So that was the government's Decent Home Standard. When we were developing and we were just becoming becoming Almo, and we were developing our standard, we consulted with tenants, we consulted with every tenant about the Decent Home Standard, and what we got back loud and clear was that it wasn't high enough. They wanted a better standard than that. So we developed a Doncaster Decency Standard. It's not massively higher, it's just quality of some things, and we threw a few things in there. So again, if you want to see what that spec is for the Doncaster Decency Standard, more than happy to provide that. The government have just announced Decent Homes 2, which is higher again than first Decent Home, so we've got that work ongoing around costing that up and how we're going to deliver that.
Thank you. And in regards to the Doncaster Decency Standard then, does Bawlby Bridge Estate meet that standard?
Yes, it does. The decency standard is around inside the home, mainly. The aesthetics and the thermal insulation and the kitchen and the bathroom. Yeah, absolutely. All the properties on the Bawlby Bridge Estate meet the Decent Home Standard and also meet the fire safety standards as well, because that changed for high-rise, post-Grenfell, Building Safety Act, etc. So, yeah, we absolutely do. We've got sprinklers, we've got decompartmentalisation, whoa, I said it, yeah, they all meet the Decent Home Standard. So, and we've got stock condition survey information that we're up to about 75% at the moment, stock condition information, constantly building that up. So yeah, they absolutely do. The issues with the Bawlby Bridge Estate are mainly around environmental factors, issues in the communal areas, not for want of trying on our part to combat that, and the security, the doors, which are vandalised a lot.
Thank you. No further questions from me, Chair.
Thank you.
Just further to Steve's removing the express clause, can I make a note that I'd like to make sure that we still have the succession part of it being thought about. It doesn't necessarily have to be called an express clause, but where somebody lives in a home where it's going to be utilised to our standards, that we don't need to drag them over cobbles and make them justify it, that we take on board that it's part and parcel of.
That's a really good point. Yeah. That's a really good point, Councillor Wood, and absolutely we will do that. If we're removing those automatic, or not removing, if we're saying that no automatic succession for non-family members, we will put in place that process, and that will be defined in the tenancy agreement and the tenancy policy, that we will provide new tenancies for people that are eligible. Yes.
Thank you for that. Just one final question from me regarding the right to buy. The high-rise flats in Bawlby Bridge, are there any right to buy applications for the flats?
Good question. I don't actually know, Councillor Jackson. I'll find out. We don't have any leaseholders in the high-rise, and I'll have to look at what the right to buy exemptions are in high-rise. I think they are exempt, but I will find out and I will let you know.
Thank you for that. Have we any more questions for the panel at all? Anybody? If there are no recommendation, Does the panel feel it has discussed the proposed changes set out in the report, support and endorse the strategy prior to consideration by Cabinet? And the Executive be asked to consider removal of the express clause to extend succession rights be removed. Is this agreed? Agreed. Agreed. Thank you. Thank you. We'll now move on to the next item. And that is the overview and scrutiny work panel and the Council's forward plan of key decisions. And I will hand over to Christine Rothwell to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The work plan's there just for members' information to outline what the full scrutiny programme is undertaking across all the panels, but you'll actually note, and from what Jane and Yvonne has said today, coming up on your agenda is actually the tenancy agreement, and I think off the top of my head it's the 5th of August they'll be coming to consult with you on that as things stand at the moment. And then the Council's forward plan of key decisions is there for the panel's information. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Does that conclude the business? Does anybody have any comments? Any other comments at all, please? If there aren't any, sorry.
Yeah, just in addition, I'd like to add to this overview and scrutiny panel the thought about the planning process and how education and green spaces are measured and took into consideration in the planning process. So I would like to think that we can involve the planners in how we can make it so that there's data available at all meetings that helps the planning committee make more informative decisions.
Thank you for those comments. Are there any other? If there be no more questions or comments, we will close the meeting and thank everybody for their attendance and your response. Thank you.